It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! It's Feedback Friday. And as people on Twitch pointed out, the ha is very, very important to the Feedback Friday song. You have to get this. I also have to get this in before I forget because I keep doing it. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Your patron support allows me to do topics that tend to get demonetized by YouTube. Including, I had to fight the hot take video. Apparently, YouTube's word search algorithm, aka keyword flag, flags hot take, the word hot take. So, yeah, I had to fight that one too. Really frustrating, really time consuming. People talk about video games being addictive, something I personally don't subscribe to, and I'll get into that in my next web series, more on that in a bit. But you know, the unhealthy relationship between YouTube and its creators and the creators in YouTube, you have to constantly watch your channel like a hawk to make sure dumb shenanigans are not happening, and that's really super frustrating. I hate doing it. I allot so much time per day to YouTube and I have to leave it because I have to do other things, like, you know, work on a new show and change my hair slightly for the new show. Yeah, I'm going kind of more harsh. You notice I cut quite a bit off because it was strawy, but I also just needed something lower maintenance. The super, like, ultra femme curly curl for Lady Bits, it was a lot of work. It was 2 hours of hair every episode, and I thought, if I'm supposed to be in, like, a survival bunker for boss fight, I'm not gonna have, like, glam hair. It's gonna have to be something that's done with a straightening iron. So I went that way. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about your feedback. Gonna start with, some people did say they wanted me to elaborate on my issues with the whole LGTBQ plus umbrella. And I'll be very brief because I want to get onto some of the other comments as well, but I did ask you to let me know if you wanted. Some people said yes, so I will. The LGBTQ plus umbrella is lumping together gender identity and sexuality, and the two things might have some crossover, but they are not the same. By crossover, I mean in someone's sort of voyage of self-discovery, they may at first identify as, say, a lesbian woman, and then come to realize they are a straight trans man, or a, you know, gender non-conforming individual, and that makes sexuality difficult to label in those terms. But there's issues. I was talking to a comic who happens to be a trans man, and they use the pronoun they, said that they have gotten a lot of hostility from lesbians ever since they came out as trans, and that back when I was doing, like, gay rights activism in the 1990s, we had an issue with, like, gay men and lesbians have nothing in common. Nothing. You want to see a nasty fight, at least in the 90s, get a bunch of, like, gay male activists and a bunch of lesbians in a room together. Shit went sideways fast. And it's similar when you're dealing with sexuality, same-sex attraction, or bisexuality. It just gets erased all the time for various reasons. I could talk for like an hour on that topic alone. But when you try to combine gender identity and sexuality, there are some forge welds, for lack of a better term, that don't stick. And it causes some issues in messaging. I get that a lot of activism is numbers games, and so they want to lump everybody together for that strength in numbers, but it pulls muscles a lot of the time, because talking about sexuality and talking about gender identity are absolutely not the same thing. I mean, look at Caitlyn Jenner. Hardcore conservative Republican, just happened to be, you know, born in the wrong body. That's, you know, that journey is nothing like somebody who has to recognize that I mean, I guess recognizing you're different is the common thing, but at some point every person in the world recognizes they're different somehow. That's really reductive. And so that's what I meant by the issues with that umbrella term. And then you have poor asexual people who have just been so smeared by this incel stuff lately. There's a lot of confusion around asexuality and celibacy and all that stuff. And I just feel like their voices, or I just think that their voices are not getting the prominence because now people use that incel term as just a generic smear for anybody whose opinion they don't like. And that shit's not cool. Like, possibly more on that later. But I want to get to the videos. The Game of Thrones and Mortal Kombat video on the nudity double standard went a lot better than I thought based on some of the compare and contrast stuff I've been doing lately. Might have just been luck that people agreed. There was an interesting point that Oron Darklord made in the comments. I mentioned Oron a lot because he's a really good commenter. He pointed out that, he says, you're right that nudity and sex tend to be considered more okay when prudes can rationalize that it's being shown in a way that suggests it's bad, when it's a guilty pleasure rather than just a pleasure. But you have to remember, Game of Thrones started before the culture war, before tropes versus women. The Mortal Kombat that came out the same year as Game of Thrones Season 1 was the sexiest Mortal Kombat in the series. That's Mortal Kombat 9. The standard being applied was, at the time, consistent. But Game of Thrones got attacked by the culture war too, particularly over the rape, arguably. You know, you get into a lot of issues there. I'll spare that, of Sansa Stark. And after that controversy, I did notice a marked change in the show. Much less nudity, particularly for major characters. Cersei crowning herself, Sansa suddenly becoming this badass political mastermind, Yara becoming a much more prominent, powerful character. Generally a big focus on making it so that suddenly every region of the story was either ruled by a woman or a woman was the power behind the throne. Even Daenerys' dresses, which had previously been very sexy and sleeveless and full of cutouts that showed some skin, suddenly became fully covering with big shoulder pads and stuff, and not just when she was in the north, and it would make sense, also when she's in the warmer parts of Westeros. That's a tricky one, because it could be that the backlash against the Ramsay Bolton Sansa Stark thing caused the show to go in a different direction, or that's about the time they ran out of books and were creating more on their own. So it's impossible to tell whether it shifted because they now didn't have enough source material to work with and had to make it up as they went, or because, in fact, they were responding to the backlash. So that's a good point. I don't know which is which. It's very possible it's a combination of both. I feel terrible for Weiss and Benioff. They've been taking a lot of crap. Hi, Momo. You want to come up? Yeah, they've been taking a lot of crap. Come here, buddy. Here's the Momos. Hi, Momos. There he is. About making a crappy ending and things like that. They were hired on to be adapters, not creators. Very different task. Being a good adapter is a unique skill. Taking someone else's book and translating it into a good TV show or a good movie is a unique skill. Not everybody can do it. I think the early Harry Potter films suffered from being too close to the books. And when, different directors, Momo settling in. Okay, baby Momo. There we go. Yeah. When other directors who are like, no, we're going to make this a movie. We're not going to follow the books quite so closely. Then the action really picked up and my husband stopped falling asleep during them. Oh, I have to do a caveat. Twitch Tuesday night, somebody asked a comparable show to the A-Team. I said that I'd have to defer to my husband on this one because he's the vintage TV expert. He initially said the Golden Girls was the closest thing of the era, but he also said that the Fall Guy, even though it predates the A-Team some, I believe, I'm not sure, but the Fall Guy is, in his opinion, the closest thing to A-Team on television of that era. So there you go, clarification. Yes, my husband, at least my husband's voice got featured on Twitch on Tuesday. Yeah, that was a sidestep of a sidestep. Sorry, tangent. That's the word I'm looking for. Sorry, guys. I'm really tired. Right, Momo? Right. We've been chasing doggy and kitty pee so you don't get sick. That's right. Okay, we don't talk about that. I'm sorry, Momo. Okay, So, yeah, I feel kind of bad for the crap that the Game of Thrones showrunners are taking, just because I know showrunning is a really, really hard gig, especially with cable shows like that have so many moving parts, huge cast. I I am always amazed, having done television production, that shows of that magnitude get made at all. The miracle is that everything wasn't a hot mess. And it's one thing when you're taking a pre-existing story and adapting it, and all the beats, and where you need to go, and the great moments from the novels, and when you have to make it up yourself. They didn't sign up to make stuff up for themselves. They expected the books to be done. And I hope people will be a little bit easier on them going forward. Especially since they telegraphed who's going to be on the Iron Throne with the season 1 promo poster, which I found really interesting. But let's get back to video stuff, because there was some interesting stuff on people reacted very strongly to the Fat Thor stuff, and somebody pointed out, and I realized this is probably why I had a different impression of it than other people. They did Fat Thor in the comics. Basically, Thor had a dad bod in the comics, because he went off and wanted to be a good husband to Lady Sif and a good dad to Woden, and he let himself go a little bit. And so if you were sort of familiar with it, you chuckled at it as sort of a comics reference. I didn't read into it the same way a lot of people did. So, yeah, somebody posted a picture of it in the comments. So if you want to see it, go ahead. My nose is going red again. That's weird. Probably because I have to clean this room. Okay, so moving on to the hot take video, there weren't that many comments. The most notable thing about that is YouTube demonetized it and had to fight it. But let's move on to the censorship and Sarkeesian topic. That went a lot better than I thought. I thought I was going to get a lot more of, why are you still talking about this? Why are you still making it relevant? So I'm glad I didn't get that. There was a really interesting comment about an emotional abuse structure or paradigm in the whole thing. And I'm going to read the comment. Kudos to Chris W. Whoops. The issue is the Sarkeesians of the world ultimately are the destroyers of fun, and they've successfully monopolized the conversation through more than a few emotionally abusive tactics. Everything is measured as something harmful by design and of malicious intent, and no challenge to that view is given the time of day. Even the ideas of things that are just fun gets vilified for not promoting social issues these days. When that's the only example of women you get, you can't deny some skittishness is warranted, no matter how much we tell people not to stereotype. Part of me does blame ourselves. I've dealt with enough emotional abuse in my life to know that it doesn't go away over time, especially if it's enabled. Outrage tactics are something I've felt need their calling out, not for what you want or say you want in many cases, but how you go about it. As I've said many times, don't blame and cry oppression, try a please and thank you. Sadly, this doesn't get much support, even if we point out how much leftist outrage culture contributed to Trump's support. Some people just refuse either to see the connection as connection between treating others as villains or beings beneath you, and then moving on to more supportive venues. I think the emotional abuse comment is something that really hit home for me, because I had spent years attempting please and thank yous with PR people and trying to talk to developers directly, and I don't like public shaming. It's like, hey, can we have a discussion about the depictions of women in some of your games, because I have some ideas. And it was always, that's nice, and then I'll let the developers know, and then never heard from them again. Unfortunately, they responded to bad tactics, and so those bad tactics ruled the day. And Chris is right that there is some blame on the part of those people that made those tactics be the ones that worked. So agreed. I don't know quite what else to say about that. I know a lot of people are very, very upset about the Sony censorship stuff, and I kind of feel like I understand why Sony is taking the approach it is. I don't agree with the approach it's taking, but I do understand why, based on what I understand about the company. They play the long game. They are very conservative. They are very careful in the moves they make. So it doesn't really surprise me. It surprises the shit out of me that Nintendo's opened up, but I think they're a bit giddy about the Switch. But yeah, going back to what Oron said about, 2011 was a very different environment than today. And that's kind of scary that stuff changed that much in under a decade, but that is what happens. Now, what that says is that this is temporary. Eventually, people will get sick of being offended by everything, and the pendulum will swing backward. I've seen this happen at least twice in my lifetime. The issue is not letting a bunch of people get trampled when that pendulum swings. And I think that's what's happened with this generation. People who have been around in gaming, significantly pre-2011, people who were around in the 90s and the 80s and even the 70s in some cases, they got thrown under the bus by this current wave. And a lot of people want to blame third wave feminism. Third wave feminism started in the 1990s. The problem is we're almost in a sex wars scenario. Some people are saying this is fourth wave feminism. Some people are saying this is into the third. It very much feels like the end of a third wave because we're in a sex war situation. The same thing that crippled and eventually ended the second wave. People can't agree on the role of sexy stuff. And it's divided by the media, which, if it has its druthers, wants as much sex as possible because sex sells. Sorry, I'm making sure the dog doesn't pee in my office. Get out of here, Loki. Go. He'll go pee somewhere else. But, and then, academia, who, for obvious reasons of personal bias, doesn't like depictions of sexy ladies. They want everyone to be buttoned up and cerebral, like them. So once the dust settles and once all the fires are put out, we'll see where we're at. And I'm really concerned about the backlash, because the backlash can either be like a sort of moderate swing, more to a reasonable middle, or it can be this huge FU swing to, a bunch of bad stuff that actually isn't good. Now, isn't good for anybody in terms of depiction. I'm going to continue this train of thought on Monday, based on the Death Stranding information the info that dropped yesterday. So I'll save more stuff about that for Monday. I'll give you a bit of a hint. It has to do with, Death Stranding is a Sony game. It's a Japanese Sony game. We all know Kojima is Kojima. Is Sony going to try to censor Kojima? Because that would be a huge mistake. That's a mistake Konami made. Will be very interesting to see what happens. More on that on Monday. And so I guess that's it for Feedback Friday this week. Shorter than usual, but I didn't want to belabor the point. There's a lot of really great comments in the videos. Go ahead and read them. I couldn't find kind of a consensus, so I just kind of picked a couple comments that I thought were especially, well thought out and risky in some ways, and focused on those. Wide diversity of thought, which I always like. I always enjoy when people bring disparate perspectives to things and nobody flips out. So yay. We've reasserted equilibrium on this channel, I think, because I stopped making shorter videos again. Yikes. All right. So that's going to be it for me for the week. Back Monday. Have a great weekend. Hopefully the sun will stay shining. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. And because you guys liked it before, if you don't like what I say in this video,